bonafide beats. Heavy hit splits, wild file style, freak flows fast, close chord dial, make links slate at the 8 pass, make more papes, too tired crash, self-serve cake, all night nag, hurry home now, girl gets mad, love
and
lifestyle,
we're
love
back. Welcome everybody back to the Deep Water Podcast. I know it's been a while since we've last dropped an episode, but much like everybody else, we have things that needed to be taken care of considering the situation that we all kind of find ourselves in right now. But we are back, and what we're going to begin to do today is we're going to address where this roster is by doing another position group by position group evaluation, adding in the pieces that the Dolphins have added in this offseason, including the draft picks and the free agents. And we're going to start with the most important part of any football team, and that's the offensive line. But first, before we do that, let's take care of a little bit of house cleaning. We'd like to thank you guys for putting the word out. We noticed we picked up a few more subscribers here, but there's one other thing that we would like for you guys to do, because we're just finding out about this kind of stuff too, because, you know, we're mostly focused on football. And we need you guys to click that like button and subscribe, of course, and click the bell, because evidently there's some kind of an algorithm we need to try to beat to get our views up, because we feel that our points of view are controversial enough that we need to be going toe-to-toe with these other podcasts and with the mainstream media. And that's not going to happen if people do not know who we are and they don't know who you are. Now, we made you guys a promise that we're going to start getting you guys more and more involved in this show, and we're trying to get the systems in place to do that. We had the one guest. So shout out to Frosty. Thank you for being a part of the show. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our contact information, because we want to start getting you guys involved. There's a lot of comments out there, and we see a lot of guys are doing exactly what we're doing. They're looking at the film, they're evaluating the team, and they have a voice that needs to kind of be heard, because it's not just us. We want to build this platform with the fan base itself. All right. So click the like, click the subscribe, help us beat this algorithm that evidently we're fighting against here. Okay. One other thing we would like to address before we move forward is the schedule came out. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Dolphins' upcoming schedule this year in 2020. And it's an interesting schedule. It's a tough schedule. You know, the league is not going to give us anything. We're going to have to go out and we're going to have to take it. And I got no problem with that. I would rather have it that way. And it looks like beginning in October, we have a stretch from October 4th to November 8th where Miami has 6 consecutive West Coast games. We have a back-to-back West Coast trip October 11th and October 18th against two of the best defenses in football in San Francisco and Denver. And we finished that stretch of the season up at Arizona, who made a whole lot of improvements this year. Okay. And of course, I think you know how we finished the season. We got the Patriots on the 20th, and that's after we play the Chiefs. Then we have a game away at the Raiders, and then we go away to the Buffalo Bills to finish up the season. And oh, wouldn't that be sweet to go up there and punch the Bills in the mouth in Orchard Park, shut them up for all that chirping they did last year when they swept us. Okay? And that's what we're going to do. We don't care about this schedule. You beat the teams that's in front of you. And that's what we plan to do this season. All right? So let's move on to the task at hand here. Let's dig into this new offensive line that the Dolphins have put together this offseason, where you could see as many as 4 new starters on this offensive line. And what we have done is we've gone ahead and put together a little chart on how we think the Dolphins are going to open up training camp this year. All right. We think that Austin Jackson, the rookie, is going to be given every single opportunity to win the starting job at left tackle. We believe that Eric Flowers is going to be your starting left guard. Ted Karras was brought in to start at center from New England. And we believe that Robert Hunt will ultimately start camp in the starting right guard position instead of playing at right tackle where he played in college. And Jesse Davis will be your starting right tackle to open up camp. And you see the backups are listed as Marcus Davenport, Michael Dieter, Keaton Sutherland, and Jesse Davis and Robert Hunt, respectively, in those positions. Now, the interesting part is where we have camp competition, right? And this is where we believe that this is where Brian Flores eats. This is the yard he likes to play in, because Brian Flores, one thing about him is I can promise you, he doesn't care where you were drafted at. He don't care how much money you making. The guys who perform in practice will get every single opportunity to start. And there's some intriguing guys in here that could actually catapult their way up to a starting position. And one of them is Solomon Kenley, the guard from the University of Georgia. And what we believe is this. Ted Karras is your starting center. Eric Flowers will be your starting left guard. Austin Jackson will be your starting left tackle. And Jesse Davis will be your starting right tackle. That's what we would bank on right now, barring injury, becoming the first week of the season. So in essence, we believe that Robert Hunt and Solomon Kenley were ultimately brought in to compete for one position, and that's right guard. So we think that's how it's going to play out in camp, and that's where that battle is going to end up. But if you look at what the Dolphins did, because we're going to talk about strategy here for a second, all of these guys they brought in, whether it's Eric Flowers, Robert Hunt, or Solomon Kenley, they all have one thing in common, and it's a problem that the Dolphins have dealt with for years, and that's bull rushing interior linemen getting in the quarterback's lap. And it looks like the Dolphins made a conscious effort to get bigger in the interior and start getting these guys who are a lot closer to 330 than they are 310, and guys who can really anchor against bull rushes. And starting with that as a point, what we're going to do is we're going to slide on over to the film room here. Now, there's a couple of things that we're not going to do. We're not going to look at Eric Flowers' film with the Redskins, honestly, because we want you guys to go and look at one particular game, okay? Week 7, the 49ers played the Redskins in a sloppy, wet game. And we want you to go and look at the condensed version of that game if you don't have a lot of time, and look at the job that Eric Flowers did in that game against probably the best defensive line in football. And it speaks for itself, because we don't just want to show you everything. We want you to go out and look at some things for yourself. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to fast forward over to rookie Austin Jackson that the Dolphins drafted in the first round at left tackle. Now, before we get into football, let's look at what Austin Jackson went through this past season. And more importantly, what his sister is going through. I wish the young lady well. And that's that she was suffering from Diamond-Blackfan anemia. And Austin turned out to be a perfect match for her. And evidently, this is a painful procedure. And he underwent the surgery on August 3rd, and a month later, he returned to practice. Okay. So he was suffering through strength and condition issues this entire season. And that's what you're going to see right here. And we're going to use a game that he struggled in. But what we want you to see is we want you to watch his feet. Okay? He struggled against A.J. Epineza in this game. But you could see that most of the issues that he had, they all revolved around strength. Because he has these ticker tape feet, like MC Hammer used to have, an old rapper back in the day. I know you young folks don't know who he is. But he has ticker tape footwork. And look at it. He can step out. He can get those long arms out, and he can push pass rushers beyond the quarterback so that all the quarterback has to do is step up in the pocket. Once again, great feet, but he doesn't have that punch, because remember, he's coming off surgery and playing football a month later. So he didn't have an offseason to work out and get bigger, stronger, and faster, which is critical for offensive linemen more than any other position on the field, and particularly when you're in college. So he can get out, he can turn defensive linemen, and honestly, he reminds me a lot of Laramie Tunsil. Now, he doesn't have the ability to handle the hand fighting yet, and technical pass rushes are going to give him problems. And we fully expect to see that this season because he's going to have to learn. But let's rewind this back because I want you to notice his footwork right here on this play because he's going to check Espinoza, spin off him, and go downfield and find somebody to hit. I don't think you fully appreciate how good his feet are as an offensive tackle. And I think the Dolphins got a gem due to circumstances in the draft this season with Austin Jackson. And I think he's going to easily win that left tackle position. Now, let's look at what the NFL had to say about Austin Jackson and see if it fits with what you saw in a game that he technically struggled in, okay? They call him an early entry tackle prospect who is raw but gifted and is likely to be coveted by a variety of teams thanks to his true left tackle traits. Jackson has loads of athletic ability and play talent that is waiting to be developed and harvested. Inconsistent hand placement and footwork could be exploited early on if teams try and rush him into the starting lineup, but his issues are correctable. Did we just talk about him struggling against technically sound pass rushers and his hand placement issues? When you're really, really strong, the hand placement is less of something that highlights you as someone to go after when you're really, really strong. But again, he did not have an offseason to work out physically. He's scheme diverse with potential guard flexibility if he improves his strength. He could become an early starter, but may offer a wider split between floor and ceiling than some teams might like. And we believe that that is a function of what happened to him in his offseason, in his final season at USC. And we honestly believe that the Dolphins are going to be able to coach this guy up. And we found a starting left tackle for the next 10 years in Miami. Now, how important that tackle position is in relation to a certain left-handed quarterback that Miami just drafted, of course, we believe that the right tackle position is more important than the left tackle position in a left-handed offense. But we're going to get to that when we get to the quarterbacks. Now, Robert Hunt, and you're just going to have to trust us on this one because this is another guy that we're not going to look at film on this episode, but we did watch him play. And the issue with Robert Hunt and watching film with Robert Hunt is this. Louisiana Lafayette didn't exactly have a lot of tough opponents, okay? And he missed quite a few games with a sports hernia that also caused him to miss the Senior Bowl, which we would have liked to have seen in the Senior Bowl because we can get a gauge based on competition. The last big-time relevant game they played was against Alabama in 2018, in a game that they got shellacked in. So we're not going to go back 2 years and look at that film. But we can tell you in this game, and in every game you see with Robert Hunt, you see the athletic traits that really intrigue teams because he's a very big man with plus movement skills, okay? And you're going to hear that again with this guy. So just trust us on the analysis with Robert Hunt. And we believe that they're going to move him inside to right guard because there's some things you see on tape with him from an inexperienced standpoint where redirecting, it looks like he's had some issues with. But when you're inside, you're in the phone booth. And right now at this point in his career, we believe he's built for that. Similar to the way that Laramie Tunsil played left guard in his rookie season. We believe that's going to be the plan with Robert Hunt in his rookie season. And Jesse Davis's play, especially the second half of last season, he should remain as the starting right tackle right now. Now, this doesn't mean that Brian Flores won't give Robert Hunt a look-see at right tackle because especially in camp, what they're going to do is they're going to mix and match everybody at a lot of different positions. But if we had to start a game right now, this is what we would go with. So what does the NFL feel about Robert Hunt? Like Cody Ford in last year's draft, Hunt is a plus athlete with a big man's frame who could be considered at guard or tackle. Inconsistent footwork and pad level are the primary culprits when he fails to win the rep. But there aren't any physical limitations that should prevent him from improving in both areas. Pass protection traits are present, but getting the skill level up to par is going to take time. He's a little raw, but he has the necessary talent to become a solid future starter at right tackle. And pretty much that's what we saw, because when he got his hands on people, they stopped. And that's just what it is. When he got his hands on people, they stopped. And this includes against the talent level at Alabama 2 years ago. But due to that hernia, there's really no reason for us to go back and look at him maul those guys in that conference that he played in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to an intriguing prospect from the University of Georgia, and that's Solomon Kenley. Now, the NFL is not as high on Solomon Kenley as we would like, or as we are, because we're projecting Solomon Kenley for the 2021 season. And to be honest, the thing that intrigues us about Solomon Kenley is we have a soft spot in our heart for just nasty football players. And he is a nasty guard, okay? And that is the first two words in the NFL's evaluation about Solomon Kenley, okay? Nasty guard who lives in scrap mode. That's right up our alley. Looking for fights inside relatively small phone booth where he's the most comfortable. Kenley has the frame of a powerful guard, but doesn't bend well enough to generate leverage and push at the point of attack. He's a mauler with enough finesse to get some reach and cutoff blocks, but faces scheme limitations. Slide quickness is limited, and his tendency to lunge allows rushers to work around his edge earlier than teams like. The size and toughness are great, but Kenley needs to play with better control and technique to become an average NFL backup. Now, we believe Solomon Kenley's ceiling is higher than average NFL backup with coaching, because there's some things about a guy who can stand his ground against a bull rush that we really like, particularly when you have an undersized quarterback like Tua, who needs as much space in front of him as possible to operate and to be able to see over the line of scrimmage and determine throwing lanes. So we're going to roll over to the tape and we're going to show you what's good about Solomon Kenley. And then we're going to show you what's bad about Solomon Kenley. And who are we going to use as a point of reference? Well, Georgia played Auburn. And we could put together a 30-minute highlight reel of Derek Brown just bull rushing anybody and everybody. It doesn't even matter. Just push him right back into the quarterback's lap and do it in less than 3 seconds. Or just give him a quick swim, give him a club, and keep it moving. So in this particular game, there was only about 3 matchups directly with Kenley and Derek Brown. And we're going to look at one of those right now. So here we go in this 2nd and 7 in the second quarter, 7-0 lead by Georgia. And you should be able to identify where the left guard is by now. Okay, he's the guy right next to the center. And Derek Brown is going to line up directly in front of him. And I want you to watch this bull rush that Derek Brown is going to eventually win. Look at this. Look at this. That ball should have gone a long time ago. This is a big man who can stand his ground against other big men. And you have to ask yourself, how much time do you want? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. That ball has to come out. That deflected pass is not on Solomon Kenley. It's on Jake Fromm. So that is what's good about Solomon Kenley, because he consistently did that against everybody, week in, week out. Once he locks on and sinks his hips, it's going to take a whole lot to get him to move backward into the quarterback's lap. Now, let's look at what's bad about Solomon Kenley. And it's what the NFL was referencing. When he gets too high, he gets his head over his feet and he gets off balance and he's easily manipulated. And those are the kinds of mistakes you cannot make against a defensive lineman like Derek Brown. And you're going to see a lot of Derek Browns in the NFL, okay? So here we have this 2nd and 5. And what's going to happen is he's going to get too high and just get tossed to the side by Derek Brown. And this is going to happen when you're a man of his size and you haven't really done a lot athletically to help yourself from a balance standpoint. So as you can see, he's basically just going to get bench pressed by Derrick Brown. And when he extends his arms, Derrick Brown is going to take that left hand. He's going to come on. He's going to slap him on that left shoulder because his head is over his heels, and he's just going to go by the wayside. So watch this here. There's the press. Boom. Just got rid of him. And that is going to happen with Solomon Kenley because he's a very big man who's used to just being the biggest, meanest, nastiest guy in the phone booth in the middle. So he's going to have to learn some technique things to help himself out in the NFL. Now let's look at the only other time that they matched up in this game. And here you're going to see that it's 2nd down and 10, and Auburn is pretty much going to have this zero blitz going on. And Derrick Brown is once again in front of Solomon Kenley. And this is the thing. When you have a man of Solomon Kenley's size and another man to double down and collapse, that's dead. That's dead. They're not going anywhere. And you'll see that game in, game out, week in, week out. When he's on a double team, it's pretty much unfair to the interior defensive line in front of him because he has nowhere to go. So, based on these moves, what are they building in Miami? Obviously, they have gotten a lot bigger and a lot more physical on the interior of the offensive line. And I think what's happening is because of Tua's draft status, Miami finally decided that it was time to move more towards a power blocking scheme rather than a zone blocking scheme because we're going to come downhill now. They brought in Elandon Roberts, who's a backup fullback, and they drafted Chandler Cox last season, and they got very big on the interior of the offensive line. New offensive coordinator, Chan Gailey, loves a downhill offense. And I think that's where we are headed because if you can get that running game going, if Tua Tagovailoa can come out of play action, it is going to be unfair. They are going to begin running the score up. And we're going to be back to the days of explosive offenses like we had with Dan Marino, but the added element of a power running game leading that offense. Okay? So it looks like that's where Brian Flores and Chris Greer are headed this season. And we hope that's where they're headed this season because we've been begging for this for over a decade. And it looks like we're finally going to get what we're asking for. So stay tuned for the next episode of the Deep Water Podcast where we're going to move on to the next position group. And this is what you guys all love so much. It's time to discuss the quarterback room on the Deep Water Podcast. We'll see you on the other side.
City overpowers the country. Asphalt rolling over animals and trees. And y'all still sleep. Red dirt used for clay brick. The country overpowers the city on some rain shit. Broke it all down in the slot where the hogs be. Chickens in the backyard, dog on the ground sleep. Pond in the front yard, that's where the fish at. The city sold the country for this shit in the contract. Now they got beef, but the stock is the same world. Flexing on each other when they the same girl. City made commerce to feed the illusion. Country didn't double up green with dead men. Fuel to the fire, they both got burnt quick. Screaming, God help me, and the devil made me do it. City in the country sold out for real cheap. Worry about each other when the beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat.